But today we're going to start a new series. I want us to look at this idea of anxiety. Relatable. Instantly, Riley's like, let's do this. I want to give a little bit of a shout out. Some of this information is from an organization called the Fuller Youth Institute. They are phenomenal. They put out incredible material. They've helped put together a lot of this series. And I think it's going to be really beneficial to us as a high school ministry, especially given the last year and a lot of you starting to take next steps into the next season of life. So during the series, we're going to be walking through Scripture. We're going to be watching a couple of videos that they've put together for us. I've got some of my own thoughts to share. We're going to be sharing stuff as a group. We might break into small groups at some point. But really, I want this to be about us to explore this idea of anxiety. Partially because I think, like Riley said, it's relatable. I also think that it's misunderstood and misapplied. I'm not saying anything to any singular person, but I think a lot of people that claim anxiety take away from the importance of the people that genuinely suffer from clinical anxiety. And I want us to look at that. I want us to understand what is this, because I think a lot of us, at the end of the day, need to understand what is causing me stress in my life and where is Jesus in the midst of this. What is this supposed to look like? I'm following Jesus and life is still difficult. What's up with that? So it's going to be 4 weeks long as we walk through this. And we're gonna learn and hopefully understand how to seek Jesus in the face of anxiety. Now, I have a video to get us started. It's just a couple minutes long. And while it's happening, I have an exercise for us, all right? And there's a lot of us here this morning, and so I just want us to first and foremost, while we're working through this series, I really need respect for one another to be at the core of it. Because you don't know what the person next to you is going through. We may be talking through some stuff and you're like, yeah, I get it. This isn't about me. And the person next to you might genuinely be here at the hospital that we call a church saying, I need Jesus in my life. My mental health is out of whack and I am anxious day in and day out. And we don't want to deprive one another of that. We're also going to have opportunities for people to share. So in addition to respecting one another, this is judgment-free zone. We're going to be open and we're going to be honest. And you're going to get out of this what you put into it. So while we have this video playing, it's a little unconventional, and we're going to see how it works. We might need to spread out a little bit, but I have this pad of paper up here, and I have some markers. And I just want to pose the question of what causes you, whatever you want to call it, stress, anxiety, to feel overwhelmed. And I want to encourage you to come up here, grab a marker, and put it up here. Now, you don't need to be, or you can be as specific or as broad as you want. All right? But I want to encourage that, and we're going to come back to it later. So go ahead and take a look at this video, and as you feel comfortable, go ahead and come up here and write what makes you anxious.
I'm like, calm down, you're fine. And then you just keep saying that faster and faster.
I should not be this worried about it.
It gave me a lot of anxiety not knowing what to even do in high school.
Stress is a normal part of life when we are under pressure in new and demanding circumstances. That's a good thing because it helps us adapt when it matters most. There are many reasons why we may feel a little bit of anxiety in today's world. Anxiety is one of the emotions that doesn't feel great, like sadness or anger or fear. Anxiety is unpleasant, but it plays an important role in our lives. We are going to feel anxiety from time to time in our lives, but we don't have to feel anxious about feeling anxious. Everyone experiences anxiety.
Yes.
Yes. Oh, yes.
I do feel anxious.
I'm anxious all the time.
I think just the overall pressure to do very well in a lot of different categories.
Homework.
For AP classes, for honors and all that.
Once that test comes in front of me, everything blanks and I'm like, oh gosh.
Reading out loud in class. Getting ready for college.
Did you get in? Have you sent the things? And
accumulates, it's just stress. These relationships can cause a lot of anxiety.
Making friends.
Relationships with parents.
Social media, I blame myself too. We put the best parts of ourselves on social media. And if you spend a lot of time like looking at that and kind of indoctrinating yourself that that's like how life is, then you kind of blame yourself for a lot of the bad things that happen.
Well, like a lot of people were very competitive with each other.
You want to have this certain body, or you want to have this certain amount of money.
Growing up, I definitely didn't have a lot of the things that I wanted, you know, like the things that I wore or even like school supplies.
I was like up all night trying to think, is this the right thing to wear? Like, what do freshmen wear?
I had like a ton of acne on my face, and I felt like nobody else did in my school, and especially in my friend group. I felt like that's all that people were looking at.
I just have really racing thoughts. My thoughts just move really quickly to like all the different fears.
And a lot of times it's not even something that would happen, it's just your anxious brain just coming up with scenarios.
It's like everything's closing in on you, and like you can't do anything, like you're worried about what's gonna happen.
If anyone talks to me, it kind of goes in one ear and out the other. I just focus on like what I'm anxious about, and I can't think about anything else.
Sometimes it can affect your physical body. You can have a hard time breathing.
You're like breathing, I guess, like it kind of like bottles up and it freaks you out.
I just can't breathe. I can't get a full breath in.
Sometimes it's like my chest is tight. Other times it's like I'm burning a hole in my stomach.
If you feel like you're on a roller coaster and it's like right when you're at the very, very top and you feel like your stomach is like up in your chest and you're like about to fall.
Having 1,000 cups of coffee in your body, which you can imagine is a little much.
They're a little more sweaty than usual. You don't want anyone to notice, and you kind of just think that everyone's looking at you and you're a weirdo and no one's gonna like you because you're freaking out.
That's kind of what it feels like, at least for me.
It's really hard to explain.
I, for a long time, felt like I was the only one who felt that way. And when I started talking to my friends about it, they were like, oh, I actually feel the same way.
Like, a lot of people deal with that problem.
I mean, I know, at least with me and my friends, we would all experience it, and we'd just talk about it a little bit, like what's going on, like what we're worried about.
Saying what is making me anxious already feels better. Just put it out there. Just use what words you can, and you guys can just start talking about it. Because if you keep it inside, it just gets worse and worse and worse, and it gets bigger and bigger. But again, if you say it out loud, it's not as scary.
A lot of people go through it. As cheesy as it sounds, you're not alone. A lot of people have anxiety.
So throughout the whole time this morning, if there's things that come to mind, feel free to come up here and add them on. Good job to those of you that have so far. And as we watch a video like that and we hear from people, granted we don't know them, but they're high school and college kids, just like you guys, we begin to realize that this idea of anxiety is something we all experience. And because anxious feelings have this potential to grow and cause disruption in our lives, it's something that we need to talk about. Because it's one of those things, to keep it inside and to keep it to yourself, it'll do more harm than good. Throughout this series, we're going to be opening up the Bible to watch God work in anxious situations. We're going to talk about spiritual practices that help us when we're stressed out, and I want to keep encouraging you to build relationships with people that you trust, to be able to talk through these things and not hold them inside. I do want to encourage you at any point during this series, if there's things that you want to talk to me about, please reach out or reach out to your leaders. We are here to walk through life with you. And just because it may not be something that we have gone through, we love you guys so much that if there is something that is causing you stress or anxiety in your life and you've been holding it in, please come talk to us. We are safe people to talk to. If you don't know who to talk to about something, let me know and I can help connect you. We're going to start by looking at a story from the Bible. Seems like a good place to start something like this. If you have a Bible with you, you can go ahead and turn to the book of Mark. One of the four gospel accounts, Mark details a lot of Jesus' interactions. We're going to look at Mark chapter 6. And you can turn there. It's also on the screen here up at the front. But Mark 6, 45 to 51. Now, I realize for some this question brings anxiety. But is there anybody who would like to read those verses for us? Toby, go for it. You can do it either from your Bible, or if this is easier, you can read it from right up there. Go for it.
45 through 51.
45 through 51.
Okay. Immediately he made his disciples get into the boat before. Or wait. Immediately, I'm going to restart here.
Restart.
Immediately he made his disciples get into the boat and go before him to the other side, to Bethsaida, while he dismissed the crowd. And after he had taken leave of them, he went up on the mountain to pray. And when evening came, the boat was out on the sea, and he was alone on the land. And he saw that they were making headway painfully, for the wind was against them. And about the fourth watch of the night, he came to them, walking on the sea. He meant to pass by them, but when they saw him walking on the sea, they thought it was a ghost, and cried out, for they all saw him and were terrified. But immediately he spoke to them and said, "Take heart, it is I. Do not be afraid." And he got into the boat with them, and the wind ceased, and they were utterly astounded.
So we see this event unfold. Jesus and the 12 had been together. He sends them on ahead because he withdrew by himself to pray. They start sailing across the sea. It's not going so well. They're in a storm. And remember, these are a good portion of his disciples are fishermen. They know how to sail. They know what to do. And it's not going well. And Jesus, I don't know, sometimes I like how casual the Bible is about things. Like the author's just like, and Jesus just walked out on the water. And we're like, oh yeah, he walked on the, wait, what? He walked out on the water and sees the boat and then ultimately gets in. And what we see in this, because it raises a question, that question is, what's unusual about Jesus' words or actions? When we read a story like this, we should be drawn, when Jesus does things, it's different than what we would expect, or different than anything we've ever observed in our own lives. And in this story, Jesus' walk is steady, even in the midst of a storm, of an intense situation. And when he encounters his disciples, now, I don't totally know why it says that he meant to go past them, but Jesus has a plan for things, so maybe it's just to get ahead of them. But when he sees them, as Mark says, when he sees them in this situation, he stops. And what's unusual about Jesus' words and actions in this point is that Jesus steps into the unsteady boat. It may sound cheesy, but Jesus stepped into this unsteady, this wobbly, this wave-tossed boat in the middle of a storm. What he does is he enters the anxious situation alongside his disciples. To us, this may seem weird, but this is exactly what Jesus does, is he enters into the situation alongside his disciples. Throughout the Bible, if we were to peel back, and we spent this winter doing a quick 6-week overview of the entire Bible, but we see stories where people are in anxious situations. And if we were to try to brainstorm who in the Bible exhibited anxiety, I think at first thought, Moses, Abraham, David, Esther, we have person after person that we're studying and that we're understanding what's going on in these anxious situations. Humanity experiences anxiety. And the truth is, the people of God are not exempt from this. In fact, like many things, I almost wonder if the people of God are more prone to feelings of anxiety, because we see and we begin to understand the way things should be versus the way things are. And for the disciples, this is true as well. In fact, this story that Toby read for us isn't the only time this had happened. In fact, it's not even the only time that this exact scenario had unfolded for them. If we turn back the pages, not very far, from Mark 6 to Mark 4, we see exactly the same thing happen. And what's powerful about using the same gospel is this is a different story. Because if we were to look at it in a different gospel account, we might be able to make an argument and say, yes, Matthew or John or Luke recorded the same story, and we're just looking at the same story. But if it's Mark, it's two different stories. It's two different examples. And we can see here the disciples, again, crossing on a boat. This time Jesus is with them. He's in the boat. He's asleep. And they wake him up in the middle of the storm, say, "Teacher, don't you even care?" The version I use says perishing. Like, dude, do you not care that we're about to die? How could you be taking a nap right now? We're dying. And he rises, and it says he rebukes the storm, saying, "Peace, be still." And then he rebukes the disciples. "Why are you afraid? Have you no faith?" And they're filled with fear. When we look at these two stories, we see at the core that once again, Jesus is in the unsteady situation with his disciples. This one even more so than the last one. In both stories, we see Jesus speaking or acting from a place of calm stillness, but entering into the anxious situation with his disciples. He does not leave them alone in this tense situation. He doesn't leave them alone in their anxiety, but he joins them and is with them. And what do we notice about the disciples' response? Well, this first instance in Mark 4, they're afraid, and that's understandable. It's early on. They're pretty sure, they're starting to figure out who this Jesus guy is. They're noticing there's something different about him. I mean, he's healing people. He's saying some pretty cool things. It sounds like the Messiah that they've been hearing about for their whole life. But now to be in the middle of a storm and have this person stand up and rebuke nature and have nature respond. I don't know if you've ever been in a storm situation or maybe on the water and there's rough seas and you stand up and you try to rebuke it. It's probably not going to go very well. You kind of look, I don't want to say like an idiot, but if I didn't know you and I walked down the street and I saw you standing on a street corner yelling at the wind, I might laugh. But Jesus calms the storm. He enters into their confusion. And the disciples are a great representation of us because now, 2 chapters later, almost the same exact situation happens, and they're afraid again. You would think, I've seen Jesus work this incredible thing. Here comes Jesus. We're going to be okay. But again, it's this anxiety that builds up. And we could almost just stop there. We could almost say, look at these 2 examples of Jesus entering into anxious situations, that Jesus is with us in the storms that we face, and that he can calm them. Because that's absolutely true. Not only can he calm the storms, but he never leaves us in the midst of chaos. It may feel like it. There may be times where you, like the disciples with Jesus asleep on the boat, are crying out in the middle of a difficult situation and saying, "God, where are you? Don't you care what's happening?" Jesus chooses to step into our condition. Jesus chooses to be with us in 3 important areas. In times of peace, in times of anxiety, and in times of confusion. He didn't leave the disciples, and he doesn't leave you. We're going to keep going, and we're going to get a little more personal with it, with this question. Very similar that we asked at the beginning. This just makes it more flow with the story of Jesus. But what's making your boat feel unsteady? What's causing you anxiety? And I've got a list up here. Yeah. Absolutely. And again, if you think of other things, I encourage you to write them up there, and we can be encouraged with one another. But what's causing you to be anxious? My guess for many of us that one of the top things on the list is school. I know, talking to you guys as a group, there's a carefree attitude about, oh yeah, I'm online, I'm in person, it's this or that, I don't really care. But I know from talking to you one-on-one that it's not so carefree. And that for many of you right now, understandably so, school is incredibly anxiety-ridden. That many of you, especially the juniors and the seniors, are dealing with workloads and expectations and due dates and college and all manner of things, while also trying to navigate a situation that's never happened before. My junior year was incredibly stressful. Can't imagine what it would be like right now. I absolutely can't. Maybe it's the sports or activities that you used to be involved in, that you want to be involved in. Maybe you're still involved in them, but they're very different. And they feel very different. Even some church things have had to change. We haven't been able to do as much this year. We lost a lot last year. Maybe it's friendships that are causing you anxiety. Maybe there's a relationship in your life that's anxiety producing. Maybe there's something going on at home. Maybe like it says up here, parents' expectations. Maybe it's relationships with siblings. Maybe it's just trying to figure out who you are. Maybe it's that balance of trying to figure out, I'm a 16, 17, 18-year-old high school student. I'm going to put on this front of I know it all and my parents know nothing, and really on the inside you know that you don't know what you're doing. And you feel like when you look around, everybody else does. Maybe like it said in the video, that you live your life judging the standard of social media. That you look at what other people post and say, my life is so much lesser, so much less glamorous than what that person's doing, and I can't live up to that expectation. Social media is a great tool for keeping in touch, and it's a detrimental part of our society. And there was no social media when I was growing up. We had MySpace was kind of on the scene, a little different. And I'm really glad it wasn't. I struggled enough with how I viewed myself in high school that if I think there's social media, it would have drastically negatively impacted my life. And I know that it impacts many of you. There's so many things that cause us, or maybe others, maybe there's things that you don't struggle with. Maybe in all honesty, maybe school right now, you're like, this is the best year for me. And that's awesome. Because when we see a list like this, don't feel guilty if there's things that don't cause you issues. One of the beautiful things about community, though, is we get to rally around and encourage one another. Think about for yourself, where would you rank anxiety in your life? And you could be specific or broad. Is it high? Is it low? Is it somewhere in between? Is it, in all honesty, a roller coaster throughout the day, depending what day, what's happening, who's over, who I'm talking to, what I'm supposed to do, what date it is? Some other ideas. In addition to school or getting into college or trying to figure out what to do after high school, because there's this incredible pressure and expectation. I've lived it and I hate it. You hit junior year of high school, and the question is, where are you going to college? What are you doing after you graduate? It's okay to look that person in the eyes and say, I don't know. Back off, all right? It's okay. It's okay. But then, once you hit your senior year, oh man, if you don't know where you're going next year, don't you know that society's leaving you behind? I guess your life's over. Are you kidding me? Your life's 17 years old. It's far from over. You're going to be okay. Maybe you didn't get into the school you wanted. Maybe your credits aren't you're going to be okay. All right? High school and college were a long time ago for me. Life has turned out just fine. All right? Just wait till you start. Wait till you declare where you're going to college, because then the question is, what are you majoring in? And then you show up to college and you find those smug students. I'm sorry if this is you. It wasn't me. First day of school, they're like, what's your 5, 10, and 20-year plan? They're like, I'm going to major in this, then I'm going to go work here, and then I'm going to do this. And again, I don't know, back off. That was me in college, all right? Gosh. Maybe there's something in here I need to work on. No, I'm through it. It's all good. But some other ideas, maybe keeping up with classmates or friends, seeing their grades, what they're good at. I had a friend in high school. He was a good friend for a long time. Hated him. Photographic memory. Did he need to study? No. Did I? Oh, yeah. What a jerk. Fine, I've told him that to his face. Maybe there's this idea, we talked a little bit about expectations from parents, but there's also expectations for teachers. And I think a lot of people forget this year that as stressful it is for each of us navigating school, let's really put ourselves in our teachers' shoes. I don't think any of us really envy the things that teachers are having to figure out this year. Maybe there's financial concerns in your family. Maybe a family member's lost a job at some point. Maybe you're looking at school. My sophomore year of college, I came home for the summer, and the day after I came home, I found out my dad lost his job the day before, and the question instantly became, can we afford to go back to college next year? Life gets real. God provided. It was awesome. Maybe there's illness in family. Maybe you're facing peer pressure. Maybe there's relationships with friends, or there's dating relationships that are causing anxiety. Maybe there's violence in your life. And by the way, if you ever experience any sort of violence in your life, please come to me immediately. I will help you. If there's any sort of abuse going on in your family, in your friend group, talk to me. We will get you the help that you need. I will drop everything, and I will be there for you. Maybe the news causes some of us anxiety. Don't get your news from social media. I want you to run an experiment sometime. Read a headline and then go read the article. Usually a different story. What do we do, though? We read the headline. Maybe you have fear of personal safety or the health of family members, especially with COVID. Very understandable. Maybe the idea of starting a new school or moving at some point. For me, when I was a kid, one of the things that caused me, I don't know if it was anxiety, but caused me to stress out at ridiculous times was the fear of natural disasters. Right? Like something I can't control. I remember camping at Mount St. Helens once, and the whole night having nightmares that the volcano was going to erupt. Okay? Like, funny now, terrifying then. And I know Amanda growing up, similar things. Because when we grew up, there was pretty major earthquakes around here. Right? And that messes with you. But we all feel anxious. That knot in your stomach, that nagging fear when you're facing a challenge. Those are your body's natural responses to stress and pressure. And we heard in the video, there's a lot of different types of physical responses. Anxiety is this feeling that everyone at every age experiences. And one of the interesting things about anxiety is it actually exists for a reason. And it's one of our body's ways of letting us know something isn't right. But then we have to navigate and figure out what is that and what do I do about it. Maybe something's wrong. Maybe I'm in danger. Maybe my anxiety is telling me something about my body, my relationship, basic needs like food and sleep. The key is that we need to learn to listen. In those passages from Mark that we looked at, Jesus was present in the moments when people were feeling anxious, and he showed them a healthier way to respond. As we look at characters throughout the Bible, we see that while God doesn't usually place anxiety on people's shoulders, God is always there with them. That he's navigating those situations alongside them. When anxiety takes control, it makes us feel unsteady. I don't know if you've heard of this phrase, but one of the things that we do in these stressful and anxiety-filled situations are we turn to what we call coping mechanisms. Something that'll make things better, that'll take the pain away. Things like alcohol, drugs, sex and porn, self-harm. And these are our ways of trying to deal with this anxiety pain of, I just need to find something to cover up the pain. And these coping strategies that we so often try really cause more harm than good. If we ignore anxiety, it can cause other struggles. It leads to depression and can actually lead to physical health issues. I realize even saying that, please don't get anxious. Like, they're very delicate to teach on. Like, hey, your anxiety might lead to depression. You're like, oh, no, it's okay. Safe place. We're just talking. Just a group of friends talking. But that's the truth of what can happen with some of this stuff. But the good news is that we can learn how to work through anxiety in a way that isn't ignoring or numbing it, because those 4 main coping mechanisms do not work. If you are trying to cover up things in your life with drugs, alcohol, sex, and porn, we could even separate those if we wanted to, or self-harm, they're not long-term strategies, and you're doing more harm than good, and that especially is something that needs to be talked about. There are healthy ways for us to navigate anxiety and to learn to see it differently. The Fuller Youth Institute has this phrase spread throughout their stuff, that anxiety doesn't have to take us to a dangerous path. When we learn to listen, when we learn to understand what our anxiety is telling us, there's really 4 things that can come about. First is we start to learn more of who we are, what situations make us feel unsteady, and what healthy coping strategies look like. We also learn that we have some amount of power to change situations when life feels tense. But really, the 2 big things is we learn that we need to recognize where God is. And we need to practice listening to our Heavenly Father so that we can experience peace. And then in turn, share that peace with other people. Kind of like how we might cultivate a garden to grow what we want. We can cultivate practices that grow peace in our lives by helping us walk through anxious situations and recognizing that Jesus is by our side, no matter the unsteady boat and the storm that we're in. One of the other important things when we look at those stories, and really when we look at the ministry of Jesus, is Jesus rarely travels alone. He travels in a group. 12 men and a handful of faithful women who travel with him. He chose to create a close circle who supported not just him and his ministry, but supported each other once he was gone. If Jesus, God, creator of the universe, recognized the wisdom in having a small group, how much more important is it for us? And he demonstrated, he lived it out, and then he equipped them, and they continued to utilize one another. We're going to keep talking about anxiety and depression because they're important things. And I know it sounds like they just wrapped up downstairs, but that's all right. We're almost done, but we're going to keep going. But there's this 3-part strategy in these situations of feeling anxious when we're starting to feel this thing come up. And it's 3 ways to look: up, inside, and around. And this isn't some nuanced, cultural-driven thing. It's actually very simple. The first is to look up, to pause in the midst of our anxious thoughts and to seek God. To literally look up. To look to our Father in heaven. And to seek his wisdom through the Bible and to talk to others who are walking in faith. I went on this backpacking trip in high school. We went down to New Mexico and we backpacked for 10 days. It was awesome, one of the best experiences of my life. And the first day, we have this guide. The guide is with you for 2 days to show you how to camp in a safe manner. Hey, there's bears and cougars around. Here's how to how to camp and not die. But also just some practical skills. And one of the things that he did with us is he gathered us in a circle. And this is a group of 12 is guys that I'd grown up scouting with. And he had us introduce our shoes to each other. Everyone had to pick names for their shoes and introduce them. And then introduce them to the group. Man, you feel real dumb for a couple minutes there. Right? You're like, I don't know, Bert and Ernie, I guess. I don't know, Tweedledee and Tweedledum. But we go around, right? We all introduce our shoes. And he goes, great. Now that you know the names of the shoes of your friends, don't spend the time looking down. Look up at what's around you or else you're going to miss the incredible scenery. And it's true in the Christian life as well. If we're spending all our time looking down, we forget about the life that Jesus brought us into. We forget about the beauty of his creation, relationships with one another. I don't remember what I named my shoes. That's a shame. Look inside. We think, we reflect, we take time to self-examine where God is at work within us, and we allow the Holy Spirit to illuminate. To be a Christian is not a one-time decision. It's a lifetime of allowing the Holy Spirit to lead you through a process of refinement and reflection, and then to look around. We can take a good look at our anxious world. Is the world anxious? Is the world an anxious place right now? Holy cow. Yes, and that's because it is incredibly fallen and sinful. But when we take this look around, we can make peace. We can understand, we can seek the peace of Jesus in the midst of an anxious world. And when we look around, we can be that peace to somebody else. I know we don't some of us might, homework. Okay, I know we don't like homework. We don't come to church for homework, right? And honestly, I think if we were honest with ourselves, we really, when we come to church, we'll sit there and then we'll leave, and we really like to not think about what we talked about. Some do. Some of you that are doing that, that's awesome. You're an example to many. But I want to encourage you, if there's change, this isn't just about anxiety, it's about anything. If there's change you want to see in your life, you need to put in the work. And that involves going back to the things that we're talking about, going back to the scriptures. If your mental health, if your spiritual well-being, if your relationship with Jesus is contingent on the half hour you get with me once a week and the hour you get with your small group leader once a week, it's not going to cut it. And actually, you want to talk about feeling stress and anxiety? Holy cow, that puts a lot of pressure on me. Now, I love teaching you guys and bringing you what the Word says, but you need to continue that. This Sundays are really a jump point into the week. The Bible teaches us that you are a child of God, something that I think when we talk about mental health, we need to remember. The Bible talks about being renewed of our mind in Jesus. That he's willing and desires to help you, and allowing him to do so requires work and effort, but it's worth it. I had a couple bullet points that we're just going to touch on very briefly. But prayer is one of the most powerful tools that we have in our walk with Jesus. Things that we do when we invite God into our unsteady boat, into our situation. We become aware of God's presence, to settle ourselves, to recognize that Jesus is with us, but also allowing him space to talk. How many of us, our prayer lives are, dear Lord, A, B, C, D, amen, see you tomorrow? But how many of us have time built in to just sit and to just listen and to allow the Holy Spirit to respond? Renewing the day with gratitude. Man, our personal view on the day, our personal attitude shapes so much. Having a baby is exhausting. I love Jackson dearly. There are days it's very hard with him. If you want a piece of real vulnerability, you want to know what the hardest day of the week with Jackson is? Sunday. Because his morning nap is shot. He's overstimulated by the time we get home. And they're hard days. And what Amanda and I need to do is we need to encourage each other to find the gratitude, to give joy to God. Because let me tell you, sometimes when he's been screaming for 2 hours and we just want him to take a nap so we can get 10 or 20 or an hour of quiet, man, it's hard to remember the good. It really is. What can you give thanks to God for? Paying attention to our emotions. What's tense? What's difficult? Where's God in that? Forgive and asking for forgiveness. Who are you angry and frustrated with? And what do you need to seek forgiveness for in your own life? And what can God help you with tomorrow? I want to end today, and really this morning is an introduction. We're going to keep diving into this stuff over the next couple weeks. I want to end with a verse from the Gospel of Matthew. This is from Jesus himself, and I think it's one of the things, it's probably the scripture, when I think about anxiety, that comes to my mind first. And it's probably the most powerful in the Bible. It's a promise from Jesus. I think if we talk about this overarching idea of, hey, when in the difficult situations, Jesus is with you, you're like, yeah, easy for you to say, prove it. Like, okay, let's go to the source. And let's go to Jesus himself. And we read in the Gospel of Matthew, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." As you guys head into this week and think through some of this stuff and allow the Holy Spirit to illuminate what's causing you anxiety in your life, remember this from Jesus. That Jesus is inviting you to be with him. Are you weary? Are you burdened? Are you anxious? The Savior of the universe is standing there with open arms saying, come right in. I got you. Let's pray and then you guys can head out. Lord, I thank you for this promise from your word that you're with us. And Lord, we see this time and time again throughout your word that you're with us, that you do not leave us. And Lord, it's so hard to remember that in times of anxiety, of times of stress and depression. But Jesus, you're standing there right with us. Even like we sang this morning, you're with us in the fire and you're holding back the sea, Lord. May we not forget. When we're in stressful situations, Lord, may we seek you first. And may you help us to navigate every area of life. Lord, I pray for these students. They're facing so many different pressure points and pulls and decisions and things that really, Lord, no teenager should be having to face. I pray that each and every one of them find their rest in you. Help myself and their leaders, Lord, to navigate conversations with them on your behalf. May we be ambassadors for you. And may we reflect your love, grace, hope, and mercy back to them. In your son's name, amen. See you guys on Tuesday.